You are live with Get Connected. Mike Agerbo here, broadcasting from home, as well as my fellow nerds, John Biehler and AJ Vickery. Interesting times we're in right now, and we've got a pretty interesting show for you today. We're going to be talking about the television and film industry and what they're doing to be able to work from home. The technology is amazing. You got to stay tuned for that segment. We're also going to talk about photos. We've got a bit of downtime right now. What do we do with it? Well, I've actually been going through my photos, and so we've had some listeners write in saying, what's the best way to keep all our photos organized? You know, we're literally taking thousands of them on our smartphones. How do you back them up? Where do you put them? How do you organize them? Well, we're going to go through all of that for you. Let's talk about some of the tech news this week. And before we get into some of them, you had an interesting story, AJ, about Zoom, which is a program that a lot of us are using for video conferencing at work right now.
Well, it's incredible. I mean, even before the last couple of months, have you ever even heard of Zoom? Now I'm getting notices from my mom, is in her late 70s is using Zoom to talk to her family members. But the local art studio, and they have studios across Canada, came out. Obviously, we can't get the kids together. We can't put them in art classes during the day. So what they did is they embraced Zoom, and they're putting on art classes. So literally, we signed up for a class. It was $14.99 in the mail. I received the supplies to do the class, laid everything out. We logged on to Zoom, went into a room, saw the video of all the other kids that were signed up for that class that day, and then they literally went through and put on an entire class of how to do this kit. It was actually a oven-baked clay kit. So we built a little unicorn and followed all the instructions. It was a 1-hour class. When it was done, we put it in the oven. It's amazing, and all of it through Zoom.
$15?
Yeah, $14.99 included the materials and the one. And these days, if you can find 1 hour to do something with your kids during the day, it's worth more than $15. We'll be doing it again for sure. That was from 4cats.com, the number 4cats.com.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think I might do that myself to spend some time. Okay, but AJ, you talked about Zoom. We're all using it. I think the BC government just licensed it for all the students in British Columbia as well for online and video learning. But there are some issues, and John, you and I have been looking into this. Even I think New York is going after them. The New York Attorney General has written to them, raising concerns over some of the privacy issues that Zoom is having.
Yeah, apparently, I mean, it's been resolved, but initially there was an issue with people using the mobile version of Zoom, and it was leaking data to Facebook, even if you didn't have a Facebook account or the app installed on your phone. It was sending stuff. So they've since updated that and fixed it. They've also made some interesting claims about the fact that Zoom is encrypted end to end, and it appears that it's not. So it's not the secure thing you should be, talking about, sensitive topics about, especially if you don't have a password on your Zoom meeting, because we've seen all kinds of examples of meetings getting bombed by people just guessing the URLs for these meeting invites, and they're not that hard to guess. So there's a whole bunch of concerns that people have. The more usage anything gets, the more scrutiny it tends to get. And that's not definitely the situation here, where a lot of people are starting to look and question Zoom, especially for things like in the school settings where, it's students, it's kids, potentially underage teenagers using this technology, and who knows what's going on or what data is being, accessible from an unencrypted video conference call like this.
AJ, so you talked about one of the great things about Zoom, being able to get into a clay making class with your daughter and actually make a little clay figurine. I found another use that's not maybe as nice. I don't know if you read this. Zoom was used by the e-scooter company, Bird, which they have e-scooters in a number of cities around the world. They laid off 400 of their staff using a Zoom conference call. Which I'm thinking that's awful, but at the same time, like how do you during this time, if you have to lay off people, how do you do that? You
Well,
can't.
especially if you have 400 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the problem though is that not all 400 could get on the conference call,
Right.
or they missed it, and so then they're hearing from all their their colleagues, oh hey, we just all got laid off, and so then some people are saying, well, they should have just phoned everyone individually, but that's hard too, right? How many days is that going to take? And the news would get out anyway. So
I think so.
in the time we live in.
Yeah, and I think that the reality is especially under these sort of more quarantined or isolated, I should say, isolated situations or scenarios, being face to face with people in a room is impossible. I took my car in to get serviced today. And sure enough, like they were like, we're on a non, touch service. So I was like, well, what does that look like? I drive my car in, and literally there's a walkie-talkie on the table, and I literally did the entire servicing through a walkie-talkie.
Really?
And I left my car there. Yeah, left my car there, drove away in a loaner, never saw a person. So I think
was it really a garage? Like you follow some sign on a street.
No, it's the Audi dealer.
And now he has no car. Okay, we're gonna have to take a break. When we come back, we're gonna talk about how to organize your photos during this downtime. You are back with Get Connected. Mike Agerbo here. I've got fellow nerds, of course, John and AJ with me today. We have a lot of time on our hands now, gentlemen. Obviously, work fills the day. What do you do during the nights and weekends? You can only spend so much time with family. So we actually had one listener write in saying, why don't you guys do a segment on how you organize your photos while you have all this time in isolation?
We actually had two people ask the same question. Debbie in New West and Randy in Killam, Alberta.
Well, thanks for the suggestion, because it is a good one, because I've actually been doing that, looking into how I can organize my photos more. And I have to start off by saying it's more difficult now, I find, because in the old days, of course, we had our physical photos. And then when we went to digital, you typically took it with a digital camera, right? And eventually the memory card runs out of space and you got to dump those photos onto your hard drive. So you're forced to have to deal with them. And so I used programs like Photoshop Elements and imported them all in there to help me keep them organized and tag people. I don't even know how many hours. Like, it must have been hundreds of hours doing that, and kind of worthless now. The trouble now, though, is that it's not the same, because most of our photos are taken on our smartphones. And so I think I have like 15,000 photos on my iPhone. And I appreciate what they're doing on the smartphones. Like, Apple obviously tags these things in all kinds of ways, like geolocates them. Oh, hey, I was in Kelowna or Toronto or Spain. It actually tries to tag the people's faces in there, or, that's a dog, that's a car. But still, I have anxiety thinking, how am I going to organize all of these one day? AJ,
So,
what do you? I'll go with you, John, because you're the more organized one out of the bunch here. From a digital perspective.
So we were just in Spain, and I took thousands of photos. And one of the things that I do every time I get back from at least from a trip, which, no one's going on a trip for a little while now, but as I go in and I create a folder, I pick all of my favorites and I put them on Flickr. Flickr is where I kind of use that. I don't use iCloud photos. I don't use Google Photos. I don't use Amazon Photos. I don't want every single photo I've ever taken to go to the cloud. And those systems are great if you're taking a picture and you want to go. There's just too many issues with corruption if you're doing it over Wi-Fi, or you're going to burn through your data plan if you're not using Wi-Fi. And I take far too many photos. I've got at least 30,000 photos on Flickr that I would consider to be good photos. So, and the nice thing about Flickr, it's I have a Flickr Pro account, but there's a free account that you can use. I forget what the limits are on the free account. They kind of changed when they got bought by SmugMug a little while ago, but it's $75 a year for the pro account, and I have unlimited storage. I think I have over 3 terabytes worth of photos, and they're all the high resolution from my SLR, from my smartphones, everything. So
does that include video?
It does, but it's kind of clunky for video. You certainly can put it there, but it doesn't do a great job of it. But the thing I like about it is, like, when I got back from Spain, all of my photos that I took on my phone, at least, had a GPS, information. So when I look at them in Flickr, it actually shows me on a little map on the bottom of the photo where that photo was taken, which is really kind of cool. And you can actually sort your photos by location as well, which is really cool. And that's automatic.
I'm excited to hear AJ's keen photo organization skills. But, you've got Emma, your daughter, now, and you must be taking a lot of pictures. And I imagine they're all on your phone.
Well, and that's the point, Mike, that you got it right. I think the majority of us are taking these photos and we're doing it with our phone. You definitely got those people out there that have the SLR cameras and they're doing the stuff. And John is very organized and sets his stuff up. But honestly, what I do is I do have an Android-based phone, so that's a factor. But what I do is I connect and sync everything with Google Photos. So what ends up happening is that every single picture that I take gets synced into the cloud. And I know, John, you're like, I don't want that to happen. But the reality is that I have never lost a single photo. They're all up in my photo. And then it's really easy to go up there and actually create albums inside of Google Photo. And then the search capability that's in Google Photos is unbelievable. Like, for example, I take pictures of, like, my parking tickets, just as an example. So
You have a whole album just for that, AJ?
Yeah, exactly. So I was looking for a parking ticket. I just typed in parking ticket, and it was amazing how Google's logic figured out how to bring up all of the parking tickets that I've taken pictures of. I mean, did it get a few parking meters in there as well? Sure. But it didn't get pictures of my daughter. Do you know what I mean? Like, the search was incredible. Yeah. And I think that's what I really like is forget it. Just let it put everything in the cloud. And then when I want to go look for something or create an album of my daughter, I can simply just do that search, and it literally pulls things together. The only problem I have is that I'm on an Android phone, but the rest of my family isn't. They're on the Apple device, an iOS. And so now our photos are in different places, and that's a little bit annoying.
But you could install the Google Photos on the iPad devices too.
It would, but then my wife would have to agree to getting a Google account, and she's very, very suspicious of Google.
You touched on a key point there, though, AJ. I think one of the other things about these services, if you will, cloud or not cloud, is sharing them with other people, right? And having that ability to share it with the rest of your family or your friends and that kind of thing. And that quick findability is really important. I mean, even on my iPhone, it's gotten better over the years as Apple adds more features, just like on the Google side, where, it kind of recognizes and organizes, like, it knows all my selfies, it knows all my portrait photos, like all those kinds of things, and creates albums for that. And then it, like Google, it creates a little video file of here's your highlights from last month or whatever. But it's still something that, I'm going to say it, hasn't been solved. I mean, I think everyone has their own little sort of needs and desires for it, and there's no perfect solution that works for everybody. The other question that came from the listeners was, on your device, what if you're always full, right? Like, some people have all their photos on their iPad, and they have maybe a small capacity iPad. Putting them all in the cloud is the solution. But it does require internet access then to access those photos. You don't have them locally available to you, especially if you're maybe not in a place where you have internet access and you want to just look at something on your iPad, say, while you're at their doctor's office or something like that, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but for the Apple people out there, the Apple ecosystem, if you're in that ecosystem, just embrace it. And the iCloud is an amazing place for that. You're probably going to have to get more storage. There's no question. And so it's probably the cheapest storage out there compared to a lot of the competitors. And it's just seamless. It just uploads all your photos. And there's a setting in there for your photos in iCloud that you can have like a low res version on your phone. And on your phone, that low res version still looks high res. You know what I mean? It's just smaller. It'll keep the full high res version up in the cloud if you ever need that one day to make a wall poster or something. But it's just so easy to manage all of that, and it takes care of that storage or capacity issue. If you don't have a lot of memory on your iPhone or your iPad, this solves it, because it'll just keep a low res version on your device, and all the high res copies of them will be up in the cloud for you, so you don't ever have to worry about that again. So I think the moral of this story is there's no silver bullet for organizing photos. Like I can't think of one magical program that just covers everything. But to your point, AJ, Google Photos is fantastic because it's cross-platform, works on Android, works on your home computer, works on iPhones and iPads. And so the nice thing too is that it just automatically sucks all of the pictures off your different devices and computers and puts them up there and stores them for free. Basically.
And you want to talk about cheap storage. If you have to add storage, it's very inexpensive.
So I would recommend to anyone, you got to have some type of cloud backup for your photos, because that's just the world we live in. I know some people are still paranoid about it, but you're just going to have to get past that, unfortunately. I mean, you can back up all your photos onto your hard drive and get an external hard drive. And I have that myself. I think my photos are backed up into 6 different things. My computer, my server, I have an external hard drive. I have iCloud, I have Google Photos, I have Amazon Prime Photos. If anything happens, they're somewhere. So again, if you're in the Apple world, iCloud is fantastic. AJ, I love Google Photos as well. And to your point, John, Flickr is fantastic because you even use them to integrate into your website as well easily.
That's right, because you can embed them, you can share them publicly, you can even license them through Flickr if you take lots of photos that are worth licensing for stock photo purposes and Getty images and that kind of thing. But we've been talking, there's no one size fits all. But I think, Mike, you just actually hit on an interesting point too. Regardless of, I guess maybe more so if you're on the Apple side of the equation, you can use both. So then you have a redundant backup on Google as well as on iCloud. So
exactly. Okay. We have an awesome show still for you. When we come back from the break, we're going to find out about the state of the film and television production industry during this pandemic. Have they been able to transition and work from home for the most part? Well, you'd be surprised at what's happening there, and we're going to tell you all about it. You are back with Get Connected. Mike Agerbo here, broadcasting from his home studio. I've got John Biehler here with me as well. How's it going, John?
It's going well, Mike.
Okay, I've got a great couple of guests right now. We want to talk about one of the big industries here in Canada, and that would be film and television production. Obviously, hard hit. Most of the live action series and movies have had to shut down because you don't want to film with large groups of people. But a certain section of the industry is still going forward, and that would be the special effects and animation side. We've got 2 great guests today to explain how that's all working. Phil Vokins from Intel and Kris Kostiuk from STUDIOCLOUD. Thanks for joining me, gentlemen.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Pleasure to be here.
Well, I want to start off just quickly talking about your respective companies and how you're involved. Kris, we'll start with you in STUDIOCLOUD. Tell the listeners what you folks do.
Yeah, thanks very much. So CW STUDIOCLOUD, I guess our origin story is our Render Cloud offering, which started about 7 years ago. We were approached by the Vancouver studio group that wanted to attract all the Disney Marvel work up to Vancouver at the time. And in order to do that, you had to have 1,000 render nodes in order for Disney to want to provide a contract to you. At that time,
before you continue, what's a render node?
Oh, a render node. So when making animated or television series or feature films, visual effects, at the end of during the process, you need to take all of the elements, the video imagery, the live action, and the compositing, all the 3D generated elements, and render them together. So that means kind of bake them together so that you see a combined composited image that makes it look like you're, in that 3D world. And in order to accomplish that, you need hundreds, thousands of processing cores, which make up a server. in order to process that a large amount of data that's required to make those images look real. So yeah, back 7 years ago, Disney wanted, the group of studios here in Vancouver wanted to track that work up from Disney and Marvel. In order to do so, you had to have a minimum requirement of 1,000 render nodes, and there wasn't in aggregate in Vancouver 1,000 render nodes. So the Vancouver Studio Group approached our company in order to build a data center to host that compute power. And then when one studio was idle, they could cross-rent their idle capacity to the other studios. So essentially making a cooperative, a very Canadian approach to solve a media entertainment problem.
And I guess that's where you probably step in, Phil. Intel, I think most people know you're the brains inside most computers and servers.
Yep, that's right. So my role in Canada is I look after our cloud service providers in the country. And typically there are some household names in there, some of the hyperscalers that we call, which dominate the industry, companies like Google, Microsoft, Amazon. But there's also a real booming industry in Canada for local cloud service providers and partners there, of which Kris and STUDIOCLOUD is a major one for us.
So yeah, we started there with that first entry in Vancouver 7 years ago. But if you fast forward to today, we've now rolled out 7 data centers across North America, and now I have over 100,000 cores of render, which translates to actually every single Marvel feature film is rendered in STUDIOCLOUD today. Not completely, but every show. Not to mention a lot of the animated TV series like our kids are at home watching these days while we're working from home.
So you've said there's these render cores all over North America. So if there is a studio and group of artists working in Vancouver or Toronto, are they necessarily accessing the ones in Canada, or can they be accessing ones in the US as well?
They can be accessing them remotely. Our I guess differentiator is we've located our data center close to where the studios are. So then we help them connect over a dark fiber connection, which is a very large pipe of bandwidth. 10 gigabyte to 100 in some cases. And then we're providing options for multiple connections. But for the most part, our big differentiator is to make it look and feel like it was being rendered or processed on their premises. So they don't have to change any of their pipeline, which is maybe one of the more demanding parts of using the hyperscale cloud, is having to adapt your pipeline to containers and microservices, where here they can address the servers just like they were racked in their own data center.
So just so I understand, during this pandemic right now, we all have to pretty well work from home. Does this allow all these graphics artists and animators to do everything that they would typically do, at a studio, office from their home?
Yeah, great question. So that's really what's been keeping CW, STUDIOCLOUD, and our partners like Intel really busy over the last few weeks, is identifying ways and means in order to help the artists work from home, so they're not putting themselves and their families in jeopardy, and to keep the economic engine alive in Canada. So whether it's artists in Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, we've helped those studios leverage STUDIOCLOUD's internet services. So increasing their pipeline, utilizing partners like another local company, Teradici, here from Burnaby, that provides PC over IP connectivity for quality imagery. So artists can connect and utilize a workstation that's still or a PC that's still at the office, and connect to it over their just with over internet, even their basic internet from home. So that's been a big push for us, and partners like Teradici have helped step up and offered mechanisms where normally you'd have a 1-year subscription. They're providing options around monthly subscriptions, 3-month subscriptions. So it's been very, very empowering. So a good example is one of our, and they've given me permission to mention them, Icon Studios here in Vancouver has just found a mechanism through STUDIOCLOUD and CW in order to provide 360 of their artists to connect remotely. So they can keep making Elena Vavalor and those other shows that our kids can watch on Netflix and Disney+.
So a question, you talked about the place that can rent the workstation. So our graphics artists, they can use any computer at home and tap into those powerful workstations?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, that actually it's beyond just having a PC, even if they have their phone or iOS or Android device plus Windows, Mac, and Linux. Not many people have Linux at home, but some. I can connect to those workstations that are at their office and have that flexibility to use it. So yeah, it's been a great lifesaver. So many, we're following a lot of my clients on LinkedIn and seeing that they're posting that their entire operations globally are now working from home. So it's really impressive how the communities come together.
John, sorry?
I was going to say, Kris, do you think that the current situation we're working under might, once it's all over, might actually create a shift where people are going to be more aware of opportunities like STUDIOCLOUD, where they can always work from home as opposed to having to go to the office, or maybe the need for as much office space will be diminished because this facility is sort of proving itself right now?
No, I think that's a really good, astute observation. So we're definitely feel that that is going to be the trend. It was already a trend. Like a lot of our studios had embraced the ability to provide more flexibility in order to attract and attain the most talented of artists. As that's the most important part of any animation or visual effects studio is the people. So we definitely are seeing that embracing of that technology. But I do think as a trend, we expect that this will fast track a lot of, now that they've had to quickly adapt. We feel that, and they're actually providing feedback that is working really well. I think that the artists will continue to demand the flexibility to work from home.
We're talking with the folks over at Intel and CW STUDIOCLOUD and how they're keeping graphics artists and visual effects folks working here in Canada. When we come back, we'll explore the sheer power needed to make all of that happen. You're listening to Get Connected here on the Chorus Radio Network. Back after this. You are back with Get Connected. Mike Agerbo here with John Biehler. We've been talking about TV and film production in Canada here during the pandemic. Again, a lot of the shooting has had to stop, the filming, so to speak, because obviously you don't want large groups of people getting together. But animators and visual effects folks are able to work from home. We've got Kris Kostiuk from CW STUDIOCLOUD and Phil Vokins from Intel. Phil, I want to talk about the power needed to make all of this happen. When you're talking about all these amazing special effects that you're seeing in, the Avengers and these Pixar movies and what have you, what kind of Intel chips are being used in these servers?
Yeah, so what Kris was talking about there was 100,000 cores. So each CPU, essentially the brains and the engine of the computer, will have a number of cores in it, and the number of cores is dependent really upon your use case. But he's running 100,000 of these things, so a massive amount of computing power. And if you think of your PC at home, maybe 2 or potentially 4 core, if it's more of an enthusiast one, he's talking about 100,000 of these things in order to produce the effects which the industry is looking for. But it's more than that. It's more than the chip. We're talking here in the case study which we published recently talked of Optane memory. So the memory and the storage systems which are required to feed these things, these very hungry CPUs, are increasingly important. And that's what Kris and STUDIOCLOUD and his team have taken advantage of.
You talked about this Optane memory. Maybe just explain to listeners in layman's terms what that's doing differently than like regular memory in my home computer.
Yeah, of course. I think I can do that without too much geekiness, and hopefully in terms that every listener can understand. So the nodes that Kris is talking about as servers, and think of those as large computers for data centers and commercial use, but essentially the same as any other computer, including what you might run on your PC or indeed even on your phone. And it has core components, including the CPU, the brains of the computer, the memory, and the storage. Now, the memory is key here. It's what we call volatile storage, in that typically when we power any computer off, the memory would empty, excuse me. And all computers need this because it has a key advantage in that it is extremely fast. But its disadvantages are that in being so fast, it is not very dense, i.e. it's low capacity, and it can therefore be very expensive to run. And what Intel started working on back in, I think it was 2009, and recently just say brought to market after 9 or 10 years of research, is this new class of memory called Optane. And essentially we've built it so that it is way more dense, so it can hold therefore much more capacity and much more data, which is really important in visual effects. But also because it's more dense, it reaches the right economies of scale. It becomes much less expensive to buy. And so Kris and the team have taken advantage of this, not only to power these large render farms and these render nodes with more work, but in fact they can do more work in a given time, which in turn makes the Vancouver film industry much more efficient and hopefully therefore much more competitive, and keeps it at the leading edge of the world.
Kris, I've got, I think, 2 cores on my PC here at home. Can I rent that out to you?
We'll use everything we can get. We're actually fully subscribed as of this week, so it's definitely
really?
It's the requirement right now is quite high.
These data centers you're talking about, apparently there's one in Vancouver as well, you were saying.
We have three in Vancouver. We have 2 in Montreal, 1 in Toronto, and we've just recently brought online in Los Angeles, and looking at Oregon as the next step as well.
What do these centers look like? I just watched, season 3 of Westworld here, and I think I have an idea. Are there like robots walking around?
They range in size. When we first built it was really grassroots, and we put it together actually at as a collaboration with one of the schools at the Great Northern Way campus. We've subsequently Emily Carr University moved in that space, and so we've built a new data centers. Again, the importance for us is to be close to the studio. So we built one in Mount Pleasant together with our partners, eStructure. So we work together with co-location providers like eStructure and T5 and Cogent in order to leverage large scale commercial operations that have megawatts of power. And for us, like in Vancouver, we have over 100 racks of capacity. Similarly in Toronto and Montreal, and one of the big differentiators for Canada in particular is the access to hydro. So green, free cooling, and access to low cost power. So North America, Montreal and Vancouver and Toronto represent some of the lowest cost power in the province or in the country.
So you're saying right now all of your capacity is fully booked right now?
As of this last month, we're fully booked, and now makes our partners happy because they know that means we're ordering more. So our next generation of STUDIOCLOUD nodes leverage the render nodes, leverage this technology from Intel. Optane's data center persistent memory module. So what we basically quickly identified as the growing demand for memory, as a single render job would take approximately 12 cores and 128 gigs of memory. As you get into the final battle scene of Endgame, for example, there's just so much rendering and memory required in order to have all those superheroes in the same scene. So what we've noticed, and we thought it would make more sense to stack jobs. So what that means is if we could have more cores in a single computer or server and more memory, then we could do in parallel more work. And that's the essential nature of render anyways. But if we could then do that even within the server. So what our new nodes have 48 cores, so we can do 4 jobs per node. And leveraging the Optane memory, we can have 512 gigs of memory per job, divided across 4 jobs. Whereas that would become quite prohibitively expensive using DRAM. Using the Optane memory allows us to bring that cost down and provide a better value proposition to our clients. So we saw immediately about a 25% decrease in price versus DRAM. But we also allows us to get more dense, so we can fit 25% more capacity in the same 35 kilowatt rack. So that is delivering more value and making the second highest cost next to the computer is the power for it, and we use a lot of power. So our data center in Mount Pleasant, for example, is the most dense power per square foot in the province, with pushing close to 3 megawatts.
You haven't seen John's living room.
He's got a lot of processing power. All right, we'll loop you in.
It sounds like Phil needs to ship some more servers out of his garage there pretty quick up to Canada. I want to thank both of you guys for joining us on the show today. We've been talking with Phil Vokins from Intel and Kris Kostiuk from CDW STUDIOCLOUD. Again, thanks for coming on the program.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate it.
Very much so. Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
When we come back from the break, more tech to talk here on Get Connected. Stay tuned. You're back with Get Connected, and Mike Agerbo here. I've got John Biehler, and it's that time, Tech of the Week. And John, we're all Zooming right now, doing video conferencing, and you've got something pretty awesome.
Yeah, this is a plugin that actually works with any video system, not just Zoom. It works with Skype, everything. What it is called Snap Camera. And if you've ever used Snapchat and the filters, you can actually choose from hundreds of filters that people have made that Snapchat provides. And if you're watching this on the video podcast, I'm wearing a Bane mask right now. And from Batman, The Dark Knight. And the really cool thing is that it creates a virtual camera that you can actually then choose your output or your input, your camera input from within any of these apps. So it's treated like a FaceTime camera or a webcam, whatever you want. And then you can have these layers over top of it that allow you to wear funny hats, masks, eyelashes and makeup, you name it, they have it. You can be a potato, you can be a pickle, you can be a Cheeto, all kinds of crazy things.
This is awesome. I am totally getting this for my Zoom calls because I'm going insane with the vanilla-ness of these calls. So you'll be able to actually wear like a Kanye West mask or all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah, they're not all created equally. Some of them are really poorly done, and I think that's part of the charm of it, is that people are literally just doing this in Microsoft Paint, but others are a little bit more involved, where you can actually have moving mouths and eyes and that type of thing, neat visual effects, that kind of thing. It's all fun and it's all free. I've created a list of my favorites and I can switch them on the fly, which is really fun. And it's just a really neat way. And the nice thing is that it doesn't cost anything, and you can plug it into literally any system that you're using for your video conferencing.
Snap Camera available for Windows and Mac?
I believe so, yeah.
Cool. Check that out. Okay, tomorrow on the App Show, our sister show coming up on Global News Radio, CKNW 980, I think at 10 a.m. Sunday morning, we will be doing Zoom hacks. We're all using video conferencing software. Zoom is one of the more popular ones. We're going to tell you how to make the most of it, how to look the best, how to actually work those backgrounds, video backgrounds, photos, and so much more. And again, that's coming up on the App Show tomorrow. I want to thank everyone that puts the show together. John, Stephen, Christina, Paul, and Nigel. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next time.